I slammed my son's moldy lunch container on the table, and 20 parents gasped. "Our food meets all standards," Mrs. Phelps declared, her smile faltering. "Really? Then explain why my severely allergic 5-year-old came home with hives after eating this." I pulled out my phone, displaying photos of my son's swollen face. "Or why the expiration date on this yogurt was 3 months ago." Mrs. Phelps' smile faltered. "I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding, Mrs. Baker. We would never save it." My hands trembled as I unlocked my phone. 2 weeks ago, my son mentioned the yucky lunches at Happy Hearts Daycare. When I asked the staff, they assured me everything was fine. But mothers know when something's wrong. Parents shifted uncomfortably in their plastic chairs. The monthly meeting of Happy Hearts Daycare wasn't supposed to be confrontational. It was meant for fundraisers and curriculum updates, not accusations. But I'd spent $3,000 a month for premium childcare, only to discover they were endangering my son. "Amanda, we should discuss this privately," Mrs. Phelps said, her voice honey-sweet but eyes cold as ice. "Let's not disrupt the meeting. No more private discussions." I pulled a small device from my purse. "This is a recording of what happens in the kitchen when parents aren't around." I pressed play. The tinny sound of the daycare cook filled the room. "Just scrape off the green parts. They won't know the difference. And water down the milk again, that stuff's expensive." The room erupted. One mom stood up, shouting questions. Another grabbed her phone, likely texting her husband. Mrs. Phelps lunged for my recorder, but I pulled it back. "There's more," I said, meeting her gaze. So much more. I hadn't planned on becoming an investigator. 3 weeks ago, I was just another working mom, racing between pharmaceutical sales calls and daycare pickup. Happy Hearts had seemed perfect: organic meals, trained staff, and glowing reviews. It cost nearly a quarter of my salary, but Jake was worth every penny, especially with his severe dairy and nut allergies. The first hint came when Jake developed hives despite his documented allergies. Then came his reluctance to eat his lunch at school. Small things easily explained away by the staff. Until I found the lunch container. "Mrs. Phelps, please sit down." I gestured to her chair as she stood, face flushed. "I'm not finished." The parents watched, transfixed. I'd never been confrontational, always the mom who volunteered for bake sales and smiled through the endless birthday parties. But something inside me had snapped when I saw those hives on my son's face. For 2 weeks, I've been investigating. I pulled out a folder. And I'm not alone. Jessica, a new teacher at Happy Hearts, stepped forward from the back of the room. She avoided Mrs. Phelps' murderous glare. "The staff has been trying to report violations for months. We've been threatened with termination if we speak up." Mrs. Phelps jabbed a finger at Jessica. "You're fired. Everyone, this disgruntled employee is making..." "Jessica has been helping me document everything," I continued, sliding photographs across the table. Expired food, watered-down milk, children's medications stored next to cleaning supplies. Parents grabbed the photos, exclaiming in horror. I felt a grim satisfaction watching Mrs. Phelps' empire crumble in real time. "And the playground equipment that failed inspection last month?" I pulled out more documents, still being used despite the risk of collapse. "You forged the safety certificate, Mrs. Phelps." A father stood up, his face red with anger. "My son fell off that structure last week. You said it was just kids being kids." Mrs. Phelps raised her hands. "These accusations are outrageous. Amanda clearly has some personal vendetta. It's all documented." I tapped the folder. Time-stamped photos, videos, testimonials from staff who were too afraid to come forward until now. Jessica nodded. "There are 6 of us ready to testify." The room buzzed with angry parents. Mrs. Phelps' eyes darted to the door, calculating her escape. I stood firmly between her and the exit. "There's more." I pulled out a slim black device. "This is a food allergen detector. I tested Jake's lunches for 2 weeks." I slid the test results across the table. Dairy proteins in every meal, despite his documented severe allergy. That's not negligence, Mrs. Phelps. That's criminal endangerment. The meeting descended into chaos. I stood firm, answering questions, showing evidence. My phone vibrated continuously with texts from Stephanie, my so-called best friend who worked at Happy Hearts. The woman who had assured me everything was fine while knowing the truth. Check your phones, I announced, still blocking Mrs. Phelps from leaving. I've emailed everyone a complete file of evidence. Health code violations, financial records showing where your premium payments actually go, and staff testimonials. Mrs. Phelps's assistant whispered urgently in her ear, probably warning her that parents were already calling authorities. The daycare director's face had gone from flesh to ashen. Amanda, please. Her voice had lost its authoritative edge. Let's discuss this reasonably. I'm sure we can come to an arrangement. I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. An arrangement? My son could have died from anaphylaxis. What arrangement would fix that? A mother with twins raised her hand. I found moldy strawberries in Emma's lunch last week. They told me she must have forgotten them from home. Another parent chimed in. My son's inhaler was empty when he needed it. They said he must have used it all himself. The floodgates had opened. Each story emboldened another parent to speak up. Mrs. Phelps sank into her chair, outnumbered. You can't prove any of this, she finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. I pulled out my final piece of evidence. Actually, we can. Jessica wasn't the only staff member brave enough to help. I nodded toward the door where Officer Wilson walked in. The police have been building a case for weeks. Mrs. Phelps lunged for my folder, but I anticipated the move. She knocked over a chair instead, stumbling as Officer Wilson approached. Patricia Phelps? We have some questions about these safety certificates. Jessica moved to stand beside me. I should have spoken up sooner, she whispered. You did the right thing now, I answered, watching as Officer Wilson escorted Mrs. Phelps out. That's what matters. The next 3 days passed in a blur. News vans camped outside my house. Parents called day and night, alternating between gratitude and anger that they hadn't noticed sooner. The health department closed Happy Hearts indefinitely. Child Protective Services interviewed staff members. And Stephanie, my former friend, kept calling. I let each call go to voicemail. Her messages evolved from defensive, I didn't know it was that bad, to pleading, please, Amanda, I'll lose my job. I felt nothing but a cold certainty that I'd done the right thing. On the 4th day, as I drove Jake to my mother's house for daycare, my phone rang. Jessica, you need to come to the daycare, she said, her voice tense. Mrs. Phelps is back. She's removing files. Call the police, I said immediately. Already did. But she's telling everyone you planted evidence. Some parents are believing her. I made a U-turn, heart pounding. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Jake looked up from his car seat. Are we going to school, Mommy? No, sweetie. Just a quick stop. I forced a smile into the rearview mirror. When I arrived, a small crowd had gathered outside Happy Hearts. Mrs. Phelps stood on the steps, addressing concerned parents. Amanda Baker has always been difficult, she was saying. Constantly complaining, making demands. When we couldn't accommodate her unreasonable requests, she fabricated this elaborate, that's a lie. I stepped forward, clutching my purse where I kept a backup of all evidence. And you know it. Mrs. Phelps smiled tightly. Here she is now. The woman who cost 20 employees their jobs and left 60 families without childcare. I felt a moment of doubt as parents turned to stare at me. Had I gone too far? Should I have handled this differently? Then I saw Jake's allergist, Dr. Chin, pushing through the crowd. I've reviewed the medical records, she announced, holding up a folder. Multiple children experienced allergic reactions that were never reported to parents. As a mandated reporter, I've filed official complaints. A health department official joined her. Our investigation confirms numerous violations. This isn't one parent's vendetta. The evidence is overwhelming. Mrs. Phelps's facade cracked. You have no right to destroy my business. Do you know how hard I've worked? To cut corners? To endanger children. I stepped closer. You're right. I don't know how hard that was for you. She lunged at me, fingers curved like claws. Parents gasped. I stepped back, but she grabbed my purse, tearing it from my shoulder and throwing it to the ground. Where's your evidence now? She screamed, stomping on my purse. You think you're so perfect? You've ruined everything. 2 police officers restrained her as she continued shouting accusations. I calmly picked up my purse, dignity intact. The evidence isn't just in my purse, I said quietly. It's in hospital records, health department reports, and staff testimonies. It's in my son's medical files and the experiences of every child who came home sick from your care. As they led Mrs. Phelps to the police car, Jessica approached with several staff members. We've been talking, she said. What if we started our own child care center? With proper safety protocols, transparent operations, and real organic food. I looked at the building that had once seemed so perfect from the outside. It would take a lot of work. We have qualified teachers ready to commit, Jessica said. We just need someone organized to help with compliance and business operations. I thought about my pharmaceutical sales job, the constant travel, the missed moments with Jake. I might know someone, I said slowly. 6 months later, I stood at the entrance of Sunshine Grove Cooperative, cutting a ribbon as parents applauded. The former Happy Hearts building had been transformed, bright new equipment, a transparent kitchen visible to parents, and allergy protocols posted prominently. Jessica ran the educational programming while I handled operations and compliance. My pharmaceutical background proved perfect for navigating health regulations and ensuring safety protocols. For the first time in years, I felt my work mattered beyond a paycheck. Speech, called a parent, and others joined in. I hadn't prepared anything, but looking at Jake playing safely with his friends, I knew what to say. When I discovered what was happening at Happy Hearts, I could have just withdrawn my son and warned friends privately. That would have been easier. I looked around at the families gathered. But some risks shouldn't be private concerns. Some problems need collective action. I gestured to our staff, many former Happy Hearts employees who had been silenced by fear. This cooperative belongs to all of us, parents, teachers, and children. We all have a stake in its success and responsibility for its standards. I smiled at Jake, who waved excitedly. Because our children deserve nothing less than our absolute vigilance. As parents toured the facility, Jessica handed me an envelope. First month's financials. We're actually in the black already. I glanced at the numbers, impressed. The parent-owner model is working. Thanks to you. She nodded toward a group of mothers enrolled in our allergen management workshop. You could have just walked away. Most people would have. I watched Jake explaining to a new child about his allergen-free lunch station. His confidence had flourished since the change. Walking away was never an option, I said, remembering the moldy lunch container that had started it all. Not when the risk was so high. Mrs. Baker called a reporter from the local paper. How does it feel to transform a scandal into a success story? I considered the question, thinking of the recordings still saved on my phone, the folder of evidence I kept as a reminder. It feels like the beginning, I answered. Not just for this daycare, but for how we protect all children in our community. As I spoke, I noticed Stephanie hovering at the edge of the crowd. She hadn't found another job after Happy Hearts closed. Our eyes met briefly before she turned away. Some betrayals couldn't be repaired. Some risks couldn't be forgiven. But standing in the sunshine as children played safely behind me, I knew I'd made the right choice by speaking up instead of walking away. The new daycare wasn't just a business. It was proof that one person with evidence and determination could change an entire community. That knowledge was worth every trembling moment I'd stood up against Mrs. Phelps, worth every night I'd stayed up documenting violations, worth every doubt I'd pushed through to reach this day. Mommy, look. Jake called, showing off his personalized lunch container with allergen alerts built in. I excused myself from the reporter and went to kneel beside my son, exactly where I belonged. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.